Welcome to Civil War Digital Digest. I'm Will. We're on the live stream software to record an episode today because I can't get out to the East Coast, but I've got somebody I want to introduce you to. Today, we're going to talk about the work of two men and meet with one of them. We're meeting with Scott McKinley today, who is the voice behind a really cool new way to connect with history through primary documents. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Battlefields and Bourbon podcast. They're a new podcast that are telling stories from the Civil War history and combining them with their favorite bourbons, tastings, and a way to explore Civil War battlefields. It's really great. Check them out at the link that we've got here. Well, before we talk about the full battlefield like the fellas at the podcast do, let's neck it all the way down to the individual. Spared and Shared is the work of William Griffin for multiple years now, transcribing letters, journals, and diaries and making it available to us. And today is a great new way to access that. And that is with Scott R. McKinley and Spared and Shared Audio. Tell me about the space you're sitting in since we're not together now.
Well, this is actually a sound booth that I have downstairs in my house. It's more or less my home studio where I record audiobooks and the Civil War letters that we'll be talking about. I've got a professional microphone and software and hardware equipment, and it's very quiet in here. The sound is dampened, so it makes for a good listening experience.
Great. Well, you said audiobooks and Civil War letters. We know Griff's letters at Spared and Shared. Talk to me about your portion of this.
Well, Griff was kind enough to ask me if I would be interested in recording some of the letters that he's transcribed. And I jumped at the chance since I love the Civil War as far as studying it. And with voice work, it was an opportunity to do more history. And I really looked forward to that. So basically, he lets me select whichever letters that he's transcribed from. And then I'll record it, see what he thinks of it, if he likes the tone of it, for instance, and then I'll post it on a website where they're all hosted.
Great. Well, talk with me about the breadth of opportunity you have working with Griff. How many do you have to choose from?
He's done thousands of them, so I can literally select from anything that's recent that he's posting on Facebook, for instance, or I can go to any of his websites where he's got all of them archived.
Great. Well, I did an episode a couple of months ago with Steve Dacus from Research Arsenal, and a huge portion of what's in Research Arsenal are the transcribed letters that Griff has done. There's such a wealth of it there. What happens? I've been through some of them, and there's women's writing to their husbands because there's letters back and forth. How do you handle it when you run into a letter that you want to produce and it's a female voice?
Best that the latest letter that we've done actually is voiced by a woman voice actor. Her name is Julie Hoverson, and she recorded a letter from a sister to another sister up in Maine. She does a very good New England accent that isn't just Boston. And it's in regards to a talk that an escaped slave of Jefferson Davis was giving in 1863.
Talk to me about what the process is to take one of these letters and make it something we can enjoy.
Oh, I'm glad you asked that. It's very interesting. I like to read the background of the letter. Griff provides most of that on the website that he doesn't just have on the Facebook page, gives all the background of the person. So I'll make a note of where the person's from, what area of the country, and I'm trying to do as many, well, maybe not as many from the South as from the North, since there are fewer letters from the Confederates, but trying to get at least a good mix of them, and a good mix of different accents of where the regions are. Some of them I have to do a little bit of research on the accent. Some of them are already in my wheelhouse. I also take a look to see how old the person is who speaks. I look to see if the person was wounded and the circumstances that the letter was written in. I try to bring that out when I do the reading. It's the context of the entire letter that more or less guides how I read the letter. Some of it is a little more exciting, and I try to do it from the writer's point of view For instance, some of the soldiers have details that they don't want to share with a loved one. Some of them who are younger share some of those details, maybe inadvertently, that might be a little disturbing to the readers. And I try to get the sense of, in my voice, how that comes across as the person is writing the letter and how it might sound if they were reading the letter out loud to the recipient.
What's involved technically after you record, after you get out of the sound booth?
Well, the next part is by far the most time consuming, but I also enjoy editing a lot, to be honest with you. I use software and I use a spectral editing mode so I can see the different colors of the things. And it makes it much easier to spot when there's noise in the background. Maybe something is clicked or dropped, or maybe there's just a loud breath that I really want to remove and replace it with room tone. And it keeps the voice natural. I don't want to remove all breaths because you want it to sound like a human is reading it. It's not AI, and it's not an artificial voice of any kind. And it hasn't been enhanced. I don't use weird things with audio to pitch my voice or make it higher than it is or lower. It sounds artificial if you do that for the most part. Anyway, so I clean up the tracks, remove all of the outtakes that didn't work until I make sure that I've got the phrasing exactly correct and the emotion feels right for the piece. Then I splice it in with the music and the intro that I've recorded, and then I release the track out onto the website, and Griff takes a look at it and approves it, and then I make it public once that's done, and then post about it in social media and see if people will come and take a listen.
Well, we'll help with that here. And it's great to hear that we have humans bringing Civil War humans back to life, not AI bringing voices up. So that's so exciting. And I'm glad that you and Griff are working together. You've done 25 now. You're just scratching the surface. Has any of them stood out for you?
The ones I had the most feedback on and the ones that have had the most plays have been the one with the little drummer boy who was actually writing a letter to his parents. And he'd been through things that no parent would want a child of, 13, to go through and talk about in a letter. I had to be very careful with that letter. Plus, the naval ones have been rather popular. Any of the ones that had to do with ironclads. And to be honest, I'm rather interested in ironclads and any letters that show more light on what life was like living on an ironclad or on one of the Confederate, the tinclads and the other boats for the river fighting.
Tell you what, can you give us a sneak peek? What's coming up?
Well, I've got a letter from a lieutenant from Iowa whose name is Otis Whitney. He's a first lieutenant in the Iowa Volunteers, and he's writing to his wife from Mississippi in late 1862. Okay. So if you don't mind, I'll read you a little bit of one of the letters that I'm going to record next. State of Mississippi, November 29, 1862. My dear wife, I write you a few lines upon a camp chest, a candlestick of bayonet stuck in the ground. I have not heard from home since leaving Cairo, and it is hard telling when letters will arrive. As usual, we are in suspense and uncertain of our future movements. One thing, however, seems probably certain, and that is that we are not very likely to have an action with Price's forces for the present. I dare say you are glad of it, and so am I, although I would not try to flinch from any duty. Price seems to be the price of generals at retreat, and Middleton a good fighter when he can engage an enemy far inferior to him in numbers. The cannonading I wrote you about was General Grant shelling Price out of some fortifications on the Tallahatchie River about 4 miles from our present camp. Price evacuated in the night precipitously, leaving 16 of his heaviest guns spiked. His night retreat saved his army from being cut off and our division from a defeat. We make no calculations for defeat, and with an equal force numerically, I think we need not. We expected to move some 9 miles this morning, but owing to a scarcity of provisions, the march was postponed one day. So we march tomorrow, or expect to on Sunday, of course. Almost all of our movements are begun on Sunday. The next move we make may be situated where we can get sweet potatoes, sugar, and some chickens, but a stay or 2 or 3 days exhausts the supply, and then we come down to bare army rations, which is how we reduced to through greater rations and counting a 42-pound box of crackers at 52 pounds. I'm feeling middling well, though not strong. Night before last, we had a visit from several of the boys in the Iowa 5th. William Brown, Henry McWilliams among them. They are well and in good spirits. I wish you could write me about the cistern, the house painting, and the floor in the shanty, the bills, and etc. The sergeant major was just here to notify us that we move in the morning at 7:30 for a place called Oxford, 10 or 15 miles down the river. Our last camp was about a mile from a little place called Chulahoma. With a kiss for Emma and Eddie, as usual. Yours with love, Otis. P.S. Direct to Cairo, Illinois, Company H, 27 Regiment, Iowa Volunteers.
Wow. Well, thank you. We get to hear it when we listen to you on SoundCloud, and it is processed and finished. Here's a raw, although recorded today, live reading, and that's really a fun, even another way to experience and hear what this soldier went through. What does it cost to access this?
This is free to anyone who cares to listen. It's nonprofit. I'm not making any money off of this, nor is Griff.
Wow. Well, thank you, Scott. I got to ask, as you do this, what keeps you doing this?
I feel like I need to give back. I've enjoyed books and teachings for so many years, and they've enriched me. And I feel that it's about time that I share some of that in a better way than just talking about it to friends.
Great.
So.
Well, on behalf of our entire viewership, I want to say thank you for doing this. And of course, we give the shout out to Griff and the thank you for his tireless hours transcribing these letters, saving them and sparing them, and then sharing them with all of us. So, and Scott, thank you for both bringing them to life, whether it's your voice, whether it's somebody you work with. We really appreciate you doing this and sharing that with all of us.
Well, it's my pleasure. And if anyone has requests from Griff's transcribed letters, please contact me.
Well, we talk about finding a connection to Civil War history, and here's yet another way to do that. Scott has joined our CWDD Coffee Grinders. We give him a shout out, and everybody else who helps support us at Patreon so we can keep bringing this service to you out in the free space. Go to his free space, check out these stories. It's another way to connect with Civil War history. We hope you take some time and do it. We'll see you next time.